All right, welcome. We've got our next guest here is Peter Diamandis, and he's actually he's really interesting. Obviously, he's the
My mother definitely thinks so.
yeah, founder and executive chairman of X Prize Foundation. He was named by Fortune magazine world's 50 greatest leaders. He's also was the executive founder and director at Singularity University, and he's been an entrepreneur, started over 20 companies in the area of longevity, space, and venture capital and education. Peter, we've never met in person, so I'm glad to meet you here. And hopefully someday when things are different, we'll meet in person. But thanks for joining us today.
Live long and prosper.
Yeah,
Good to see you,
absolutely.
Greg.
Yep,
Hello,
definitely.
Jen. How you doing?
You're back.
So good to see you again.
Great to see you again. This is great. I get to see you like 3 times in the same month. It's
I
awesome.
know. I don't remember the last time that happened, and so you've been such a gift. And I have to say that you're the reason why we are here.
So welcome everybody to Happy Palooza. And there's nothing more important, and Jen, if I could just open up with a couple of comments, because it's really so critically important for everybody. I mean, when you ask what is the number one thing anyone wants in life, well, there's two things, right? They want their health, because the man or woman who has their health has 1,000 dreams. The man or woman who does not has but one dream. I love that saying because it's so true. If anybody's ever been ill, it's like all you can think about is how do I get over this? And the second thing is happiness. And yet we I speak for myself and those who I have known spend so little time thinking about what truly makes us happy. And how do you maximize that? And where, there are science and practices, for all of human existence, it has really been a slog. It's been about survival, right? People forget, we romanticize the past, the good old days, right? But for most of human civilization, it was like surviving to get food, or surviving against a plague or a famine, or against, oppression, or just to make it through the night. And now we're living, most everybody, not everybody, there's still, 1 billion plus people who are, on the rise, but haven't been there. And the question ultimately is, what makes you happy? What generates a happy mindset for yourself, for your family, for your company, for your city, for your society? And I think this event right now and your book, Beyond Happiness, is really, for me, a clarion call to pay attention. We pay attention, we do the things we pay attention to. And ultimately, if happiness is your objective, which I think it's the right of every human on the planet, it begins with you paying attention to what makes you happy, and you're taking control of your life. It's like, there's an old saying that I got from Landmark. It's being the river, not the leaf on the river. In other words, deciding your path versus being just subject to the currents out there. So I just wanted to say that and say hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. And, I'm using this, remaining 30 minutes with you, Jen, to think about happiness. Because thinking about it and thinking about happiness and gratitude, and delivering happiness and delivering gratitude is one of the most important things that we can do. It's that mindset that's so critically important.
Thank you.
End of monologue.
No, I don't think I have any questions. Just keep going.
No.
You're in flow. Oh gosh, Peter, this has been an amazing event. We all have, everyone that's been tuning in have you to thank. The production team probably has you to not thank, because they've been
they're working hard.
And we're finally at the end of the day, been looking forward to this conversation for sure, because we've known each other quite a while now, and seen each other over the years, and been following your work and your books of abundance, singularity, and your passions in longevity. And so I just saw you recently at TED for the celebration for Tony. So I have one question that I've been wanting to ask, which is, how come you haven't shared your secret to longevity with everyone? Because you've obviously discovered the fountain of youth. When I saw you, I'm like, are you Benjamin Button near me? What is going
Yeah, it's a secret. We'll bottle it up. We'll distribute it for free to the world. So, on that subject of longevity, because it's an area I'm passionate about, my venture fund, Bold Capital, we're investing 3/4 of our capital is going into biotech, health tech, longevity worlds. Tony Robbins and I just finished a book called Life Force that's coming out beginning of February, which is a big book, but it looks at all of the breakthroughs going on to address, heart disease, cancer, dementia, diabetes, all of these things. It's incredible how much is going on. No one truly understands the tsunami of change coming. And it's because of these exponential technologies, which is the work that I teach in my Abundance 360 and Singularity and X Prize. It's, the convergence of computation, sensors, networks, AI, robotics, 3D printing, AR, VR, blockchain. All of these things are converging in biology as well, and we're beginning to understand why we age and why we might not need to, and how do we slow aging, stop aging. And over the last 5 years, the conversation to actually reversing aging has become very real, to the point where I'm working on $100 million age reversal X Prize right now. So, I just think if you're happy and you have a vision of your future that's larger than the vision of your past, then longevity is a great thing. If you've given up in life, if you're can't get out of bed and don't want to continue, then longevity is painful.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure because my mom, she's just been bugging about my skin every day. So I'm sure she's going to give you a call and say, whatever you're doing, Peter, give some to Jenn because she's a dire.
There's a great product, by the way, called OneSkin.
Oh, yeah.
That Carolina Reese, it was 4 women who have PhDs from Brazil in the longevity space, got together and created this product called OneSkin. You can just go to, I think it's oneskin.co. And they, one of the things that causes aging is called Synolitic cells, senile cells so the cells of the human body have replicate 50 times. And at the end of 50 replications, called the Hayflick limit, they do one of 3 things. Either they have the decency to die, or they can become a cancer and continue growing, or they become what are called zombie cells or senile cells, and they generate these inflammatory factors. And so what OneSkin's peptide, it's a 10 amino acid peptide called OS1, it identifies senile cells in the skin and kills them, and basically reduces the inflammation there. So you can try that. I use that every night. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, there we go. There's the secret. Literally writing this down and calling my mom after this. OneSkin. So I've been asking this question of all the guests, and I'd love to throw it to you to see where you're at with it before I dive into this a bit. But the question is, it's a bit of a reflection. It's not necessarily physically where you're at, but where were you in 2020 BC, so before COVID, and where are you now?
Wow. It's a great question, and I have not heard before COVID, and I love that terminology. So my virgin ears hearing that. I think I had just published my book in January of 2020 called The Future is Faster Than You Think, looking at all of the meta trends and all of the converging exponentials that are going to change this decade, the 2020s. I like to call it the roaring 20s because I think it really is. And I was on an insane book tour of 10 cities, talking to multi-thousand person audiences. And it was a blast, but it was that frenetic rate that builds, right? And anybody with a passion and a dream and willing to put it all on the line, it can become absolutely compulsive and completely consuming. And the work I was doing with Abundance 360 and X Prize and 4 of my biotech health companies had gotten that. And obviously, when things came to a screeching halt uh, in March, April, my heart goes out to those who have had loved ones taken by COVID. But just to say it, it's been 2 years of a blessing, of that stop, focus, reconnect. So I feel like I've reconnected with myself more than ever before. I ended up going on a number of plant medicine journeys during that period of time. I really refocused, connecting with my 2 10-year-old boys during this period of time, and reconnecting with myself, and being more at 0 feet than 38,000 feet.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. So going back to that book, I mean, if anyone hasn't picked it up yet, please do. It's pretty miraculous. Like, one of my questions for you is that, how does it feel like to write this book right before the pandemic, and then literally the title of the book, and then we wake up the next morning and it came true?
Yeah.
As a futurist.
I mean, a lot of the stuff we talk about in the book, and I've co-authored it with my writing partner, Stephen Kotler. And almost all of the stuff we talk about in the book as a 10-year has accelerated by 5 years already. We're reinventing every single industry on the planet. And if you don't realize that your business fundamentals, your industry, and as an entrepreneur, your abilities to change the world are transforming this decade, right? We're undergoing a human transformation in the next 10 to 20 years that I think is going to be, as fundamental as the changes over the last century.
Mm-hmm. So knowing, what you wrote in that book, what you both wrote in the book, and knowing what you know now, is there anything you would change or amplify since the last 18 months, or since you finished it?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, everything we're seeing and hearing now, with Facebook's announcement. I mean, I look at what are the meta trends that are going on in the world, right? The emergence of AI as one of the most fundamental forces that's going to transform every single industry, right? Human level AI that Ray Kurzweil talks about in the next decade, the AI human collaboration, emotional AI, where AI is able to understand human emotion, embedded AI, and everything around you is going to become smart and alive. And then the whole metaverse, world that we're seeing emerging. We write about that in length because the metaverse is going to transform education, healthcare, retail, everything. And then I think one of the most fundamental parts is the whole, longevity mindset, that we're going to add 10, 20 healthy years to your lifespan. And by the way, during those additional 10 or 20 healthy years, science does not stand still. There are additional breakthroughs that will add an additional 10, 20, 30 healthy years on your life. So, those who are, on the younger side of the spectrum may have, indefinite lifespans. I'm hoping I'm ahead of the curve enough to make it. Anyway.
Yeah, if anyone is, I'm sure that you would fall in your category. What I'm really curious is, you named some industries in there that you talk about in the book of shopping, future of shopping, advertising, entertainment, education, healthcare. Curious, like, from your observations in the last 18 plus months, which of these industries or which of these sectors have you felt have adapted the best or the most to this future?
I think it's been forced adaptation more than anything else. Healthcare has had a forced adaptation. I think when I talk about the industries that are going to change the most, for me, it's healthcare and education. I think both are antiquated and top heavy and, broken and baroque, meaning old style and such. It's
Nice.
So we're going to move healthcare out of the hospital, out of the doctor's office, into the home, where you're constantly being monitored, right? I'm wearing my Apple Watch, my Aura ring. I've got a small RFID chip in my hand. But that's just the beginning of what we'll have, where we're being measured all the time. And if anything is out of norm, your AI will be notified, and you'll identify illness at the very beginning when it's most treatable. And so massive amount of reinvention coming there. I've got, 4 companies in that field. And then education is another one. I mean, I have 10-year-old boys at home who are, like many who are are listening and watching, who are parents. Zoom classroom for a year is kind of a joke. Some people got it right and so forth, but we're going to fundamentally reinvent education, and where it's hyper personalized, and it's in the spatial web, and it's complemented by face to face. We need human collaboration and touch, but when I'm in a virtual world and I want to learn about ancient Greece, and I put on my next iteration of an Apple or a Meta, I'll use that term, headset, and I'm in a virtual world that looks photorealistic, and I'm learning about ancient Greece, and some guy sitting on a slab of marble over there is Plato, and I walk over and say hello, and I start having a conversation, and he shows me around, talks about what he's been thinking about, and I have this experiential education that is 1,000 times better than reading in a book.
And yeah, totally. And they're already starting to do that now. I mean, I've seen examples of that in companies. Like you're probably behind one of them that I'm talking about that's doing it for education. Are you thinking this is 1, 2, 5, 10 years down the line, or what are you thinking?
So it's within 5 years, and the question is how close. And it's really the convergence of 3 things, right? It's a generation of headsets that we don't have yet, but they're on drawing boards at HTC, at Apple, at Microsoft, at Facebook, that are higher resolution and comfortable to wear for longer periods of time, that can pick up facial features and so forth. That needs to get a little bit better. The bandwidth is here, the computation is here, and then it's going to be really the embodiment of AI avatars, so that the NPCs, the non-player characters, are more intelligent than just a script. And then finally, we're going to see in parts of this, the transference between the real world and the virtual world with blockchain identified, items and properties and such. So there's a lot coming, but it's such a massive market that huge amount of capital going into it. So next 5 years.
Well, that's super exciting. And it's kind of funny when you said Meta. I can't really say Meta right now without having a little smirk.
Yes.
Thank you, Facebook. So as a futurist, I'm really curious, and we touched upon this a little bit in your webinar with your abundance community, but as a futurist and a super accurate one at that, how do you stay present?
So I stay present in conversation with my family and my boys. I stay present in my time with my friends, just reconnecting. I mean, there's no question I spend a lot more time thinking in the future and being there, and frustrated why things haven't moved faster. But yeah, presence comes from intimacy. Yeah.
So then, as such a wise person, and
I laugh at that.
Like, is that embedded? Because as a wise person, you're grounded in these things, and yet at the same time, you have the other side of your passion being futurist. Is that something that's just that you've been able to instill within yourself, or is that kind of learned behavior?
Which one? Which part?
Just being able to.
I mean, I mentioned to you I've done a couple of really super impactful plant journeys this past 2 years, and it was the realization that we're living in a extraordinary universe. In I think of us as being here in this reality in this presence right now, and then when we die, whenever that should be, hopefully it's not for some time, we're emerging back into the energy of the universe. um, I think I have more of a Buddhist point of view than the Greek Orthodoxy that I was raised in, but I think about the notion that our job on this planet is to leave it a better place, to contribute, and to love and be loved. And the trouble is, there's this constant battle between the drive and the ego of an entrepreneur to do more, to do better, to push it forward, and so forth. And at the end of the day, does it really matter? The old saying, the old sense of when a person's on their deathbed, they don't value having worked that much harder on any particular project. They value the time they spent with the ones they love. And it's just being present to that conversation. And it's a balancing act. It's, as my friend Tony Robbins said, it's not about a work-life balance. It's about a work-life integration.
Can agree with you more. So you kicked off with your monologue about happiness. So let's continue on that vein. And in the book, I try to expand the conversation about what's beyond. And part of that expansion was the curiosity behind not just celebrating our highs and knowing our highs, but knowing our lows, not just our strengths and our shadows at the same time, and to live authentically as we can as leaders. And Keith Ferrazzi was just on right before you, and
I saw him, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, he went full blown open kimono. I don't even know if that's PC to say anymore, but I mean, he's just all out there in every aspect of his life. So I'm curious how's that served you in your, going through your highs and your lows.
Yeah. So first of all, I love Keith. He's one of my dearest and closest friends on the planet. I was with him on Saturday evening at an event in Topanga. And we had a conversation which was fascinating because I haven't really thought about this. And the conversation was, how many people in your life do you have no secrets with? I mean, where you have a level of connection and intimacy where you are naked before the world. I mean, and I'm super happy that I do have a number of those people in my life where it's like all of the shit, all of the highs, lows, like, holy shit, I can't believe I did that, or whatever, is known, because I think that level of authenticity is what we should all inspire to live who we are. But you need people who know you, that level of intimacy, reflect back on you, and be able to have that honest dialogue. So the person we were speaking with said, there's nobody I have that level of intimacy with. And that's sad. It's not easy. But I think it's really important to have that for somebody in your life, if not some number of people in your life.
So by having that level of intimacy and knowing that having these people, or even person, if we're lucky enough in our lives, that exist around you, you believe that has kind of helped guide you through those highs and lows, those moments where sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important, you said, to appreciate and remember and value your low points, right? Because there's something called living in the gap that Dan Sullivan, his future coach, speaks about, and it's like it's the idea that if you measure yourself against the ideal future, which is infinity away, that's a losing proposition, right? If as an entrepreneur you measure yourself against what Elon Musk has done, it's like you're depressed and you're screwed.
Yeah.
However, if instead you can measure yourself on how far you've come, then that becomes a very meaningful journey. And so measuring yourself against infinity, a losing proposition, that's being in that gap, if you would, versus measuring yourself against how far you've come, and giving yourself permission and forgiveness to start again and begin again, having learned what you learned.
That's huge. And if you don't want to answer this question, I totally understand, but I don't want to get too personal, but was there a story or a moment that when you were in that, that cave or that hole and wasn't even sure how to get out?
Oh yeah, of course. Anybody, I mean, everybody's got it. Some journeys. I mean, listen. I mean, I have those journeys are to a large degree around some of my companies. Um, Two in particular. One was a company called Zero G that does weightless parabolic flights. It's been operating since 2004. It started in 1994. It's what is that? Almost 25 years old. We do weightless parabolic flights. I took Stephen Hawking up in it, and I worked on that company for a decade, and we to get approval from the FAA to operate, and we had gotten our first contract to operate, and the airplane was breaking, and we were on the verge of bankruptcy. I mean, like within hours, and just facing losing a decade of work and everything you'd been doing was horrific, and it's just pushing through it. X Prize, the same thing, right? And now came up with it in 94, announced it in 96, and being told no 150 times to try and raise the capital for the $10 million purse. There are other times where I had to borrow money. It's not too long ago, a dozen years ago, to just make my payments on stuff. I mean, my world's changed a lot in the last dozen years. Elon Musk had that experience in 2008 when, after the third failure of the Falcon 1 and Tesla was, out of money. I mean, we all hit low points, and the old saying, it's a matter of picking yourself up and going one round more, picking yourself off the floor. And I remember those. I remember those journeys. I remember, and I have, a good number of failures where the idea was too ahead of its time, and and I remember one of my companies early on was a launch company, and I remember my journal entries I was making about this. We had won a large contract, we couldn't get it funded. The technology wasn't coming together. This was the early 1990s, and we were one of the first, entrepreneurial commercial launch companies. And I remember writing in my journal, the patient is on life support system. Tomorrow we may pull the plug. It was that kind of. I was like anthropomorphizing the company, which was this near-death experience. And as an entrepreneur, those are incredible lessons. But it's really it's enduring those and learning from them, and I think it's important for me to speak about those to people.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. I absolutely agree that it's so important, because one of the reasons why I bring these things up is just because there's so easy to see you and say, wow, what an amazing life, but not really realizing all the other things that you went through to build that resilience. Angela Duckworth was on earlier, to build that grit and to get.
It's all about grit. It is. Yeah.
It's all about grit and resilience to the next step of success and to the next level of amazing skincare.
Yep.
The way you have.
I have my abundance mug, and it says on the back here, how would you live your life if there was no scarcity? Right. So it's a question I'll ask.
Love. So I heard the word from the producer. We'd love to get you into Q&A. If you're cool with that. So Frank, come on board. Come on back.
Welcome back.
All right. Thanks so much. All right. So thanks for having me back here. I love that conversation, and really piqued my interest on a couple different things: longevity, space, your new book. Those are all the things can't wait to see. When's that book coming out, and what was the title of it again? The one with Tony Robbins?
It's called Life Force, and it comes out the first week of February 7th, I think.
Okay, great. We'll have to be on the lookout for that. let's dive into some audience questions, as we've got
Nice.
a bunch of folks that are curious and have some things they want to answer. So first off, we've got Peter Knox, and he's asking, how does one's idea of happiness change from someone that's living much longer? So now you've got longevity. How does happiness change?
That's fascinating. I think that most of the world, through their adult years, have been living to put food on the table, living for this, supporting their family and their kids, and they are typically not doing what they've always wanted to do. And what happens if, at age of 60, 70, 80, you've got the vitality, the energy, right, that you had in your 30s, and you have now all of these things behind you, and you can finally do what you want to do. Do you go back and at your third or fourth degree? Do you travel the world? Do you start the company you've always wanted to? How do you for the gift of time, what do you do with it in a way that you never had the time to do before? I think that's part of it. Maybe it's more of the things that, the purpose-driven life. You give yourself permission to live your purpose.
That's really interesting. Jen, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and I think it's totally spot on. It's a great question. And just speaking to what Peter just said, I mean, that was my parents' generation. It was probably a lot of people that are listening, the generation of people that just really had to work every day to put food on the table. And if we kind of think about it in that way, that they succeeded. And it's almost like, it's what a waste if we don't actually realize their success is what's enabling us to even have this conversation and to not do something about it, whether it's purposeful life or happiness or, who we are meant to be from an authentic point of view.
Do you realize how lucky everyone in this conversation is to be able to have the time for this, the mental bandwidth for this, the technology for this? Is we forget how lucky we are. One of the things when I meditate, and I try and meditate every day, every morning, is a gratitude meditation. A gratitude for the incredible world we're living in.
Yeah.
And people forget, because they romanticize the past and the good old days, and I think that's bullshit. It's like the good old days, you were in survival. You were dead by 40, and you were working 8 hours a week to get food on the table. These are incredible days today.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree with you more. Gratitude is such a cornerstone to the science of happiness, and there's so many studies out there that show that. And
yes.
Actually, you don't know this about me, but years ago I started a gratitude journaling app, like before the iPhones were like quite the way they are today, right when the App Store was just getting going. And it was amazing to see some of our users would jump in. And one that I always remember is this woman was a huge user, and she basically said something to the effect of, "I love seeing the sun. I'm thankful for the sun shining on my face on my 90th birthday." And those are the types of things you're like, wow, at 90 she's got this. First off, she's using our app, which I thought was phenomenal, and secondly, she's putting that out there, and I think that is such a secret to longevity is having that as a base.
Yeah. What's next in the questions?
Yeah. So next up, we got Margaret Wiggins. She's asking, X Prize is a global future positive movement. How does happiness play a role in a future positive world?
Great. So yes, X Prize is really focused on creating a compelling, hopeful, abundant future for humanity, right? What can the world look like in 20 years, and what are the breakthroughs required to get us there? And it's calling our shot and then getting us that point. And I think it's really about a lot of the things we focus on X Prize is uplifting humanity. It's a lot of the work that I do. How do you uplift every man, woman, and child on this planet? What that means is making sure they have access to all the food, energy, healthcare, education, computation, communications, all the things they need. Because if you can eliminate the fundamental battle for survival, it makes happiness a lot easier, right? There's a you probably know the numbers better than I do, Jen, but there was a study done about the correlation between income and happiness, and they found what the study found is if a person is getting has $20,000 a year income and you increase it to 30,000, their happiness increases, 40,000 increases, 50, 60,000, then it levels off, I think, at 60 or 70,000, meaning that additional dollars don't buy you happiness. And we all know of the billionaires who commit suicide because they were worth $5 billion, then they lost a couple of billion. Now they're only worth $3 billion. They step in front of a train, which is kind of insane. But if you don't have food, or you don't have clothing, or you don't have a roof over your head, yes, money will buy you additional comfort and happiness. So the question is, can we bring down that level so that everybody rises above it? And it's not about necessarily giving people more money, but it's can we dematerialize, demonetize and democratize food, energy, water, healthcare, education, all of those things, so that it becomes a human right. And there's less of a have not component to it. Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Really interesting. I think we've got time for one more question here. So, you both have had really phenomenal careers and have written books and done quite a bunch, and have interacted with some really phenomenal entrepreneurial legends in your career. So I wanted to ask you, which one of them stands out the most to you, and maybe why?
Jen, you want to go first?
Gosh, there's just so many. This just goes top of mind to me, and it sounds kind of the typical answer, but I really do respect what Elon Musk has been doing, and everyone has different opinions about him. But there is something that I feel that he is, meeting his own passions and his own purpose, and he's kind of being his authentic self. But I feel it is grounded a lot in humanity and the future of. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's those entrepreneurs who are risking it over and over and over again, are not in their comfort zone. Elon definitely hits that. I'd add to that Martine Rothblatt, who's the CEO of United Therapeutics. Martine's on her 7th or 8th moonshot, and from everything from electric vertical takeoff for landing vehicles and regrowing organs, and she's extraordinary. I've known her for 40 years, since she was Martine Rothblatt, and her journeys are inspiring. So, but let's not forget one of the main reasons we're here. Beyond Happiness. Buy the book. Join this journey. I did. I hope you guys will too. And Jen, if you're an Audible reader like I am, Jen went deep into herself and read the book, and it's not an easy task. So buy the Audible, buy the hardback, get them both. Beyond Happiness.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here, and thanks for helping make our job easier here with rounding that out and bringing it home.
Absolutely. So, listen, if you believe happiness is one of the most important things in your life, what are you doing about it today? What are you doing about it right now? What are you going to change? Can you be 25% happier in your life? Because when you are, everybody else is around you, right? Take a moment and just bring that to your game today. If you're already as happy as can be, then buy a copy of Beyond Happiness for your friends and your family. Christmas is coming up.
Spread the love. I love it. Thanks so much, Peter. Thanks so much for joining us.